Welcome everyone to this webinar, Expert Insights, COVID Impacts, Solutions and the Supply Chain. Welcome everyone from around the globe. Thank you for joining at the different times. I hope that everybody is fine wherever you are and in good health, and your families and co-workers. We have a beautiful panel today. And we will be talking about, how this crisis that we are all in is impacting different sectors of the supply chain. I will shortly introduce you to the panelists that we have on board. And but the goal is not only to talk about impacts and things that are going on. We also try to reflect a little bit on how these people in their sectors, in their businesses, are seeing the upcoming future, in that how they believe things may or may not pan out, and wherever possible, try to raise ideas or come up with thoughts that may help people in individual sectors or across the supply chain to adapt to this situation. That said, I will jump in and begin to introduce our fantastic panel. I'll just have to move this to the other side. So we have a great panel of 6. They joined us also from all over the world. So I'm really, really grateful and thankful that they all made the time. And we have experts from different sectors, from origin, from processing, from export, import, roasting, wholesale. And these people are renowned for their expertise. So I will just go on and read out their biographies to introduce them to you, in case you're not yet that familiar with what they are doing. We begin in alphabetical order and start with Adam Overton. Adam Overton is co-owner of Gesha Village Coffee Estate, which is located in southwest Ethiopia. He founded the farm with his wife, Rachel Samuel, in 2011. Together they have established Gesha as a model farm for the region, setting multiple records for price achieved at auction for African coffees. The combination of environmental concern, support for local institutions, experimentation with wild coffee varieties, and attention to detail during processing have made Gesha Village into a producer brand recognized the world over. Adam, if you just want to say hello to the world real quick.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. I'm glad you were able to join for multiple reasons, because we had a technical glitch in the beginning. The next up is Geoff Watts. Geoff Watts, of course, many people know. He's the VP of Coffee at Intelligentsia. He started as a barista and has been with the company for, I believe, 2.5 decades, being involved in many parts of the business, including roasting, wholesale, retail, and cafe, green coffee buying, and education. Geoff has together with others pioneered concepts like direct trade, microlots, and relationship coffee. Today, Geoff engages as green coffee buyer and sensory trainer, among other things, and his focus is on quality development and on working with producers to ensure high quality standards and sustainable trade. Geoff, give us a warm welcome out of Colombia.
Hola. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hello, Geoff.
Hello.
From the import side, representing the import side, we have Morten Wennersgaard. Morten is a co-founder of Nordic Approach. It was founded in 2011, and he's also the founder and managing director of Tropic, a sister company of Nordic Approach. Morten has more than a decade of experience sourcing and direct buying from producers in Africa, Central and South America, and Asia. In these businesses, he has been involved in everything from sourcing and strategy, staff administration and marketing, up until 2017. And during this time, he helped build a long-lasting relationship with producers. Now he's focusing on product development, strategy, and sourcing, as well as content marketing related stuff. Hello, Morten.
Hello, cheers from Oslo.
Thanks for joining us. Then we have Nadine Rasch, the director of Primavera Coffee Importers, formerly known as Third Wave Coffee. She's the founder of Primavera. She's born and raised in Guatemala and spent much of her childhood on her family's coffee farm. After studying and working in finance in the UK, she started working in coffee in 2012. Oh, sorry, I just got an update. In 2012, realizing the potential in the specialty coffee market, she returned to Guatemala to work on her family's farm and mill, implementing better quality in every step of the production. In 2013, she found Third Wave Coffee Source. Since 2018, it's called Primavera Coffee Importers, in search for the best coffees from Guatemala to bring them directly to roasters around the world. That's not enough, she's also a roaster. Hello, Nadine. Hola.
Here we go. Hola.
Hello. Then we have Richard, and pardon me, Richard, I will badly pronounce your name, Bliault, I believe. After graduating international rural development in the UK, Richard worked as sustainability and operations manager with coffee traders and supply chains in East Africa, foremost in Tanzania. He helped farmers achieve certifications to international standards. He also worked for import businesses in Europe, where he managed the execution of sales and purchase contract and worked in client relationship management, among other things. Today he works in trade and relationship development at Algrano. He's the contact for mid and large size roasters and anyone looking to explore how Algrano can diversify their sourcing. Hello, Richard.
Hi, everyone.
And best for last, we have Violeta Stevens, Managing Director of Union Hand Roasted. Violeta is a leading expert in sustainable value chains and Managing Director at Union Hand Roasted Coffee, one of the UK's largest specialty coffee roasters and suppliers. Violeta is responsible for driving Union's growth while ensuring the business remains at the forefront of sustainable business practices. She's a certified Q-grader and holds a postgraduate certificate in sustainable value chains from Cambridge University. Hello to the UK, Violeta.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thanks, Andy. Hi.
Well, now, of course, not to mention that all of these people have the invisible tag of a strong focus on sustainable business practices, a strong focus on farmer relationships, a strong focus on sustainability, on specialty coffee in general. So this is also what drives the nature of this webinar. We will foremost focus on the specialty coffee supply chain, because this is where the expertise lies. There are also other reasons why we want to focus on specialty coffee today, which is because the scale in general compared to commercial coffees is smaller on almost all levels. And this typically comes with more vulnerability or more sensitivity to such, I would say, challenging impacts that come with this coronavirus crisis. We currently have 2 to 3 billion people that are somehow in a lockdown situation. And this clearly affects the lives of all of us, but to a different extent when we look at the specialty coffee supply chain. There is direct impact, of course. So direct impact as in customers currently in the consuming countries cannot go to their favorite cafe and order a beverage at the moment. Direct impact includes that logistics in green coffee trade are directly affected. Another example is social distancing or health concerns during harvest at the origin sites. So these are direct effects of this crisis, but of course there is a reason why we sit here as supply chain representatives, which is that the impacts on one side always trickle down to the other side. Of course, you know, the most apparent example that the demand for coffee is decreasing, and so roasters do not want to make strong purchase commitments in an unsecure time, which then through the steps of import and export trickles down, of course, to the lives of producers that you know, are very vulnerable in terms of income, because very often their lives and livelihoods depend on this one income source for the entire year. But the longer this challenge lasts, it may have effects back down into the supply chain, because of course, if producers cannot keep producing coffee anymore, then the supply will go down. So this is a very interconnected supply chain, specialty coffee. And now we're facing this terrible and very challenging situation. And so we want to go into the individual sectors and hear a couple of examples of what is going on in the lives and businesses and of our panelists. And Adam, I would like to start with you. For different reasons, I think it makes a good start to provide context for everybody who's attending, how people at origin are affected, but also the Ethiopian harvest should have been completed by this time. So you are past harvest, but in export. So my first question would be, you know, very generally, how does the situation for processing and export in Ethiopia look like at the moment? And what do you hear from the people you work with and your wider network? And what do you expect to happen going forward?
Great. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Thanks. So yes, the harvest is over, but this is a time where there's a lot of transport of coffee from the interior to Addis for milling and export preparation. So yeah, every day there's challenges on that front. So we're not on a lockdown, but in Ethiopia we have a state of emergency with many, additional restrictions. So one of the parts of the state of emergency is that vehicles can go freely, but for transporting goods. But what's written and what's actually the case when you get in the countryside is very different. So it's a constant negotiation and possible roadblocks of your truck getting stuck. So it's a challenge to get it here as quickly as possible. I would say the exporting, the mills are open. The mill we use is open, but then we do a lot of hand picking in Ethiopia for export preparation. So especially us, we provide a very high quality, detail oriented, really perfect prepped coffee. So like at our mill, we've had to go from 80 hand pickers to 20 because of social distancing. Mm-hmm. So that's just a bottleneck. And I think everything's generally been going okay, but yeah, working with them, I've had to, even though the mill is not our personal mill, but working with the mill owner, ensuring the correct safety standards, making sure that the mill owner is comfortable. At one point, they even wanted to just close the mill because he was just overwhelmed about how to provide safety for people. And I just had to intervene and come up with a plan and protocols and just help them through that. That working is actually a good thing for Ethiopia, but working in a safe way. So, yeah, I would say, and expressing this to our clients, the situation of logistics, that everything is slower, but ensuring them that we are doing everything possible and making sure they don't get nervous, and making sure that they don't want, that they feel comfortable committing to that purchase, that they'll actually see the coffee. So letting them know at every stage that we're really on top of this, I think is key. So I don't see Ethiopia shutting down. I don't think that, we don't have that many cases. I think we have 110, more or less, at the moment. And there's just too many people that are making their living, or just putting food in their mouths on a daily basis, with no, with no other resources from the government to help them through this. So I think the government won't shut things down because people need to keep working to survive. So what else was part of the question? Did I?
No, I think this was already a great answer, and maybe I can hook into there. So I think you said the government wants people to keep working, and it is a fair approach for as long as the health is not at risk. And you mentioned that you had to reduce your pickers to a quarter, from 80 to 20. So this, how is this being set up? Are these pickers then organized in shifts so that all of the 80 pickers can keep working and maintain, a cash income? And also a second question is, in terms of, at mills, there is a lot of, physical contact with things in general, and also during the harvest process. How can you ensure, or what are the measures that have been taken to make sure that the health of your pickers and other workers are not at risk?
Well, in the mill, there's not that many other workers. It's mostly just the machine work, the large machines. So yeah, we have a contract with the 20 that that they have to, that only the same 20 come, because it's a day labor kind of work normally. But we said, no, we're going to keep the same 20 because we've gone through all the safety best practices with them and what's expected. And then even for those 20, we have 2 managers. So it's 1 manager for 10 people that are, the manager's job is to check the coffee and make sure that, it's passes the QA check, and also to make sure that when they go to lunch, that wherever they go, that they understand, proper social distancing protocols in the mill. So that's what we've had to do. But we haven't added a shift because of different reasons. It's just moving slower, the mill. We're not, it just is what it is. Things are just taking longer.
And from the other business side, as in, keeping communications up with your buyers and getting them coffee samples, what are you facing? Are people, stepping out of contracts? How's the general communication with buyers and people down the stream at the moment?
Well, everybody wants samples, and DHL is pretty amazing. You know, they can get anywhere. So everybody likes samples, even if they're at home. You know, they're happy to get a Gesha Village care package, you know, kind of brightens the day. So yeah, we're sending, you know, tons of samples to people. So everybody wants to feel, I think buyers want to feel busy. They want to feel like they're productive. They want to plan their year. They want to plan all the coffee they're going to buy. But then when it comes down to like, okay, let's get this contract, let's get this moving, then, you know, then it's like, you know, email communication that was, you know, 2 hours was now like 2 days, you know, then things start slowing down. So for me, it's, I think it's an opportunity to understand what people are going through, understand the cash flow issues that they want to plan, and try to be as cool as possible with, you know, these are our customers that have been with us for many years. So I think I look at it as an opportunity to build stronger relationship and be as understanding as possible. But on the other hand, we have a business to run and we have, you know, obligations like everybody else. So I think it's just a balancing act of being understanding, but also, you know, making sure they're really committed to that coffee. So where we used to, you know, people used to send us, you know, always 100% prepayment on our contracts, pretty much 100%, and not worry about it, get the coffee in, you know, a few weeks or a month. You know, that's hard for people to do. So we've tried to come up with some, you know, what seemed to work that we hadn't done before was taking like a down payment. So say, hey, the milling process is going to take a while. I know you don't want to hold up your cash, you know, pay 20% or 30% of the contract now. We'll mill the coffee, we'll prep it, it's yours. We'll box it up, and then right before we're ready to ship it out, you know, you'll pay the rest. So I'm comfortable. We have some cash flow. They're not tying up too much money, and you know, people seem to like that. That's just sort of something new that we started this year, and people seem to respond to it, customers. So yeah, I mean, I see most of our customers, almost all of our customers buying coffee, but buying less at this point. So my strategy is like, if all of our customers from last year can buy some coffee this year, I feel that that's successful. We're staying on their list. We're still engaging with their customers. And the idea is that we, you know, kind of ship a first small shipment, then we can ship an additional shipment later in the year, because everybody knows Ethiopian coffees, you know, are good for, you know, another 12 months from now. So they can, you know, spread it out that way. So those are some of the things we've been doing.
And I think these are great ideas and great approaches. And you mentioned it. I think it's somehow also a little bit the theme of this webinar. In this huge challenge, there is also a great opportunity somewhere. It's often very hard to find, and for some people it might be easier to find those than for others. But you mentioned the mutual understanding. You try to understand the cash flow situation of your business partners, and then you have to find a balance to make sure that your own business can remain in operation, but also, you know, do a little bit of a trade-off with your customers, which in your case is going from prepayment to a reduced down payment, and make sure that all the customers do buy to maintain the relationship, rather than trying to seek, you know, the full contracts with fewer. I think this is a good strategy, and I would like to pick that up and maybe hand over to Nadine in Guatemala. Nadine, we've listened to Adam's situation in Ethiopia. You know, feel free to hook in either way, but I'm curious how the situation in Guatemala compares to the situation in Ethiopia in terms of harvest, which is later than in Ethiopia. Maybe we just start there.
Yeah, sure. I think I agree with a lot of things that Adam said. The situation sort of hit us here at the very ends of our harvest. So we tend to have quite a long harvest. So we were in the middle of already shipping, and I think we had about, as a country, about 10% of the production still, you know, on the trees, and people were still picking. So it wasn't that much. As Adam said, you know, the roads, there is free movement of goods, not free movement of people at the moment in the country. So we have been able to move the coffee as needed. However, there's always, you know, roadblocks and things like that when people try to protect themselves. But, you know, we're trying to do our best as well. Our milling facilities are open. We've implemented all the sanitary requirements from the local government and from the World Health Organization. So everyone, you know, has to wear a mask, has to wash their hands, there's social distancing. And also we are on lockdown, on curfew. So everyone has to be home by 4 p.m., which means that, you know, the mill is working from around 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then everyone gets to go home. So I'd say we're about at a 75% capacity. However, we've been able to ship coffees and export without much delay. But the other thing that's important to mention, and as Adam was saying, I think the communication with our customers is one of the most important things to keep in mind at the moment, and for them to understand what we're going through and for us to understand what they're going through. I think everyone right now is dealing with the now and the here and trying to keep their house, you know, strong, but it's important to reach out to your trading partners and see, you know, what's going on and how we can be helpful to them and how they can help us. And in the same, we're on the same boat, and for us, success this year would be for all of our customers to buy at least a little bit of coffee from us, because at the moment we've gone ahead, we have made all the purchases from our producers, which makes me, you know, it's nervous, but it has also left me quite calm, is that we have paid all of our producers, and we have seen a little bit of interest because of the business model that we have, that we're a producer, a mill, an exporter, and an importer. I'd have to say that the Guatemalan side has been very strong. All the coffees that are bought directly from here on an FOB basis have been moving forward. What we've seen a slowdown, obviously, is in the purchases from our importer, Primavera, because clearly everyone is shut down, and we understand, and we would like to take this opportunity to communicate better with our customers and really create a collaboration that needs to exist within the supply chain, so that everyone knows what's going on and what people are going through. And my ask would be for everyone to sort of step out of their own self and see how they can understand what's going on with the other parts of the supply chain. And of course, one of the main problems is, you know, the decrease in demand and also the availability for payments. We have a lot of accounts receivable still, you know, pending, and I think that's going to be one of the challenges for the year. So from our side, as I said, we want to keep the conversation open and going to see how, as an industry and as key points within the supply chain, we make it work. Because otherwise, you know, it's going to be tougher in the next year and the following year, because it's currently quite a fragile industry, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you for these thoughts. I think you mentioned, you dropped the word, which is the demand. but also the understanding of the other side, whatever the other side may be, whoever is buying your coffees. So I'm curious, what are you doing, or what are you thinking of doing to engage buyers in this communication, to tell them what the situation is, and maybe also to give I would say not low hanging, but like feasible advice to keep buying coffee, and or approach you in a way that you have more financial ease, so that you don't have to wait for so many accounts payable, find a payment solution. What are your measures at the moment, or what are you getting back also from your buyers?
Well, one of the things that we've done is, as I said, keep the communication going. So for the coffees that are, directly bought from Guatemala on an FOB basis, we've been able to sort of make the contracts longer. So for example, we have customers that were gonna get 1 box every month, and we've sort of spread that out for the rest of the year, really. So, storing the coffee here and then shipping every other month or so. And then for the smaller roasters that purchase coffee from us in Europe and in the US, what we've done is we've decided to ship the coffees and have them in store in Europe, so that when the situation sort of opens up and there's more of a demand for coffees, we'll be ready with the coffees in Europe, and hopefully without having to do any forward contracts, people will be able to purchase on a pallet basis, and we'll give them that opportunity instead of pre-booking everything. We understand that it's very complicated, and everyone's trying to maintain, as I said, their house on order, and in reality, they know best. They know their finances more than I do. So there's no pushing for coffee. We just hope that the relationships we've built over the past 8 years are strong enough, and that the quality this year, which is absolutely excellent in Guatemala, so it's a shame that all of this happened, that will speak for itself, and we'll have coffee available for whenever people are ready to take it.
Okay, thank you for this. This seems to be relatively in line with the strategies that Adam also mentioned. I'm glad to hear that the health and the health situation is relatively seems to be relatively manageable for both of you. Maybe we take another look at the import side from Morten from Nordic Approach. Nadine, of course, works out of Guatemala and has focused there. You import from multiple origins. Now that we've listened to the situation in Ethiopia and Guatemala, how can you give us like a rough I don't want to use the word rundown, but like a rough overview of how the different situations at origins are perceived from your end?
Yes, happy to do so. I mean, in terms of origins, for us, because as you know, like coffee buying is kind of, it's also about planning ahead, months or even a year. So I have to divide it into 2 different categories. Basically, the countries that Adam and Nadine represents, that are now in the stage where they're shipping coffee, and it's exports and imports. And then there's the other category that are just about to start the harvest. So not going into the details on producer levels, because I think Adam and Nadine have covered that pretty well. But let's say what we see on a general level when we talk to our different producers and exporters is, first of all, that they are experience a lot of defaults. that put them in like a difficult situation. Producers, of course, but also a lot of exporters, because they've taken position in coffees, and importers like us and bigger roasters, they have to go down on volumes just because of the situation. I can come back to that later. But then we also see more and more across the board, like a general delay. First of all, from the shipping lines, and also there's containers shortage in some places. So like the origins that are, let's say, for us at least, that are where we're exporting from now is like Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, and Central America. And for Ethiopia, that is like a big origin for us as well as for others. I mean, we were lucky because we started to ship pretty early this year, but we've seen, for us at least the last weeks, things are moving way slower. And this is also a period where a lot of the naturals are coming into the market. We have contracted and shipped some already, but we did expect more. And like Adam says, now there's like also delays, on ground transport from the interior. So we're struggling a little bit with that, as well as it starts to get like problematic with samples and logistics and bureaucracy and things like that. And then you have Kenya as well. I know there's a lot of defaults, so I expect it to be less Kenyans in the market this year. We're also taking down the volumes slightly. But from what I heard there, it's still kind of going pretty well on the logistical side. But when you look at Uganda, we actually now have some coffees that are supposed to ship from Mombasa, and we're struggling to get it out. And Uganda is also in a place where they are currently both kind of getting into harvest in some places, and they're supposed to ship coffee. And I know for a fact that where they're where they're producing coffee now, they have, because there's restrictions on how many people you can be, like in a certain space, and you're not allowed to be more than 2 people on a truck, and all these kind of things are disturbing the kind of the efficiency, let's say. And then you have like the other countries that are just about to start the harvest. And I've been talking to a lot of people lately, even yesterday at the Laces, both like Colombia and Peru, see some challenges, especially on the picking side. Because it's, first of all, people are not allowed to move in the same way to, to go and work in the fields. So that will affect both, expecting to affect the quality a little bit, and also like in Peru, for instance, I heard that they're still able to get some labor, but it's hard, and so their picking costs increase, or it seems like it will increase pretty dramatically. And then I think there's delays across the board, and also challenges for the upcoming crop. But the good thing is, like Colombia, maybe Geoff knows even more about like the status there, but internal prices are high, which is a good thing for the farmers if they're struggling to sell it in the specialty market, and even if quality is suffering a little bit, at least it helps when internal coffee prices are higher. So yeah.
Thanks. Is there so you mentioned the different delays, but also that the cost for some of the origins may go up. Now, naturally, producers are very, their financial capital is limited and makes them very vulnerable. Are there any measures taken from the countries, as in governments, officials, institutions, to help mitigate this impact? or is there anything that the supply chain as a whole can do to ease that situation?
Oh, it's to be honest, I haven't heard much about like governments that are like taking bigger measures and are putting in any kind of action. I know at least there's I think both Nadine and Adam mentioned that like it's a lockdown, but they still allow, for instance, transport of agricultural products and things like that. But no, I haven't heard much about support on that end. And I think on our end, or on the roasters end, I guess like planning and commitment, and even if you can't buy as much as you would ideally do, try to commit to coffees. And we're kind of in a situation now where, first of all, I mean, our volumes on spot coffees are dramatically down as it is now. So 30-40% the last few months. So of course, I mean, we just have to ship less coffee than what we intended to. But also, we see that roasters are not able to plan. I understand it very well, but they're not able to commit for the next 5, 6, 7 months either. That put us in a place where we're kind of in a squeeze, because I mean we do really want to support producers and exporters, but when we have like basically no commitment from the roasters, and they don't know what they're able to take the next the months. I mean, we just we also have to try to manage that, and cash flow is of course like a problem. So I think the whole industry, like all the way from exporters to roasters, and importers included. I mean, we have to try to find solutions where everyone give and take a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I believe you ran a quick survey across your customers, across the roasters, to ask about their situation. And we have a couple of slides prepared. Do you want to just quickly walk us through the early tendencies that you found there?
Yeah. Are you going to show? Are you showing your slides, or should I just?
I'm trying. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Just tell me where you want me to navigate.
I mean, maybe you can go to slide number, I just can't remember. Go to slide number 3, and then we can take the summary at the end.
Just say stop. Is it this one?
No, the next one. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, so it's changed. Sorry. Slide number 2.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is not accurate science, and like it's also limited to like a specific segment of roasters. But we just wanted to fill out a little bit where people were at. So I mean, if you look at this slide, we just try to figure out, first of all, like about how much people have lost since COVID, and if it starts to pick up again. So we saw that most, I mean, there's like more than 50% that have that are below 50% of their production, and even like 28% said they're like less than 20%. And I think that also correlates very well with what we hear when we talk to people from the different industries. Of course, I mean, if you're also doing supermarkets, it will be very different, because I mean, there's at least for some roasters, we know that they actually have like an increase on specialty that are going through supermarkets, as well as e-commerce. Yeah, and then if you take the next slide, we just wanted to see where the market is at, because we know that, you know, like in Northern Europe, for instance, since, you know, like since they started the lockdown, everyone was in limbo, and now we hear in some markets that, you know, like it's slowly picking up again. So this was just to see, you know, like how the tendency is for the last couple of weeks. Yeah, next one. And this was more about like whether people are planning and how they, you know, like how they're going about the reservations they have with us or coffee in stock. So yeah, here most people are saying that they are stocked up for about like at least 3 to 5 months. And we also, when we talk to people, you know, like especially bigger roasters that have, you know, like are partially buying directly from origin, that obviously they have, they are pretty long on coffees now. And if it doesn't change pretty soon, they're afraid that they will, you know, like sit long for throughout 2020. That will change their buying. And I also know that, on the other hand, I know that there are people that have, you know, they plan to buy coffee from certain origins now, and they are not taking the risk because of this. So that might also change, you know, like depending on when things are getting better, it might change the marketplace a little bit. Next. Yeah, and here people are generally saying that, you know, 46% are saying that they will buy less coffee than what they planned for the next months. Next one. Yeah, now we're going into details a little bit, but again, it's a little about the same. You know, like most people say they will reduce volumes. And a lot of people are saying that they will just have to take it as it comes, to await the situation and see, you know, like take it week by week and month by month. And that also correlates with other information we have. And they will also buy less at a time and ship more frequent. Yeah, we can do the next one. And this one, to account for losses due to COVID-19. You know, like I think the good thing on this one is that a lot of the roasters are actually saying that they will still focus on the existing producer relationships, instead of, you know, like going for necessarily cheaper coffees or reduce, you know, like reduced prices, which I think is a good thing. So it seems, you know, like that people are still committed, but like everyone said, nobody knows, and you have to adapt quickly. But I think it's a good thing that people still seem to at least be willing to stick to commitments, and that they are still interested in focusing on quality rather than cheaper coffees in general. So yeah, I think that covers most of it. The last one was a summary.
Yeah, I think this is, I would say, valuable early insights. Of course, this is not, like you mentioned, this is not science, but I think it's, you know, while the pie charts on the early slides, they were not very positive, I believe this last one shows, you know, for what the small sample size is worth, that people in this industry, in the specialty coffee industry, they do seek good, strong relations to the producers, either directly or through their importer, their trade partner in general. This gives some hope, at least from my perspective, that the communication remains upright, that purchases and also payments, for as small as they may be, remain upright. And as with anything in this crisis, helps to win time, to help people build up resilience. And speaking of these, I'm sorry, speaking of these topics, just trying to navigate this away. I want to hand over to Richard from Algrano, just changing the background here. Richard, you are in a, I would say, you're a special solution provider in that you combine a logistical solution with a technology solution. So again, feel free, like everybody, to talk a little bit about your situation, but we have briefly exchanged over email. And you mentioned one point, and that hooks into the comments of Morten and actually all the others, which is to that you think the most important thing is to keep good and stable communication with both sides of the chain upright. Maybe you can just elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that, and what's going on your side of the business.
Yeah, so I mean, we're in a slightly special situation in that we really are a service provider. We act as a connection between growers and roasters, and we don't really take positions. We try to make those relationships happen. So what we see is we've been contacted quite a lot by a lot of producers, and then on the same time roasters, who kind of ask, like, what's going on? What's the impact in this place? What's the impact around me? What's the impact at origin? What's the impact at destination? What's the impact in the country next to me? And that there is this kind of slight disconnect, and that leaves people feeling a little alone, and then they turn in on themselves, and it's quite easy then to turn maybe more negative than necessary. And also it's like, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm a little bullish, but I kind of see that I don't think people have turned away from specialty coffee or good quality coffee. A lot of the roasters we speak to, I mean, they've got huge growth in their online buying. I mean, it doesn't replace in any way what they were selling to restaurant customers or through other channels, but it shows a commitment from consumers that they're still interested to consume specialty coffee. They haven't turned away from it. They're just finding it a bit harder to get to. You can't go down the corner to the cafe you like to, so they've signed up to a subscription service. So I think that commitment's not left. And I think maybe producers sometimes need to hear that, okay, our buying's reduced. We might not be able to take 100 bags this year. We can take 10 or we can take 5, but please keep this quality going. We know it's an investment for you. We know there's costs associated with it. No, you don't need to do all of it because we can't take all of it. And we recognize you have a business too. And you know what you have there, like, we don't want you to run a cost you can't afford later, because that's also on their side. They're business people too, but that they keep it going, because it's like that communication is so important. Because I mean, in my past kind of role, when I was working with more commercial coffee people, the one thing I saw in a couple of different origins I've been through, both in Ethiopia and in Tanzania, is when you get a disconnect between price and quality, and producers have been pushed towards quality, and then they lose that, it's really hard to pull it back. It is really hard for them to forget when they've been promised or they've felt a commitment to a higher price, and they've sunk the cost and they've sunk the time, and they don't get any communication what's changed. And then it's like for 2 or 3 years, I just remember used to get stories in Tanzania about, no, Richard, we're not delivering cherry to the washing station. We're just not doing it. Like, we had promises, we were going to get better prices, they didn't come, and no one talked to them. I mean, not like people on the ground were talking to them, but no one turned up and explained to them what was going on at the other end of the business and how prices changed. It's just, so I think that's where I see the communication being so important, because it will be so easy for that quality connection to be lost, and not lost because people can't buy it, but just lost because nobody explains to each other what's going on for them and how they want to remain committed and where the limits of that commitment are. I don't know, I always remember it, someone telling me, it's like, if someone explains it to you that they need to make 5% to keep themselves afloat, you're perfectly happy to know that they're making 5 or 10% on the margin of what they're doing. But if you have no idea what money they're making, then you're suddenly kind of like, oh, I'm not sure, so I feel a bit resentful when I find out they're making money on what I just bought from them. And you're like, well, you're in business. So again, that's what I mean about this kind of talking. We're a little bit optimistic in the sense that, yeah, I think it will open up again at some point. And at that point, I don't see people turning away from coffee. I don't think house prices have become any more affordable for most millennials. So they're still going to spend their disposable cash down the coffee shop instead of trying to save for a deposit. Yeah, I think that's where it is. It's communication and maybe dynamism. I am always impressed when I speak to both producers and roasters who are trying to be dynamic about this, and I see that they're getting something from it, whether it's that they're taking time to plan because they normally wouldn't, because they're stuck behind a barista bar serving 100 cappuccinos and they just couldn't work on their forecasting for the next 12 months, or it's a producer looking at improving their cost structure, or whatever it is. I think there's quite a lot of, there is opportunity in that too. I mean, a lot of businesses that I sometimes see, you think they run a bit sloppily, if that's not being too brutal. Like, you wonder how they make money. And I think maybe it's an opportunity to kind of tighten that up and to see, okay, how do we, anyone in this supply chain and this business, make sure that they're able to keep the ship tight enough that, you know, if they do get rocked a bit, they can keep moving forward.
Yeah, thanks for this. These are great comments. You know, I appreciate that that you underline your optimism, and that you, I would say, reinforce that consumers are still interested in buying the coffees. Now, on the other hand, you mentioned that disconnect. So we have people that are still buying specialty coffee. They find it more difficult to buy these coffees, and then we have roasters that, you know, need to adapt, however, with the means that they have wherever they are, because the policies are so different, and it's actually hard to follow even just from one country on what is going on, not to speak about the world consumption. Do you have any idea? I mean, clearly in your business you appear as a facilitator, but any suggestion across the supply chain, ideas, thoughts, or comments from your business partners, how they can get to this exchange faster? You mentioned this negativity if they do not hear about what's going on the other side. How can this be facilitated? And I'm just throwing out a couple of thoughts from the top of my head. Typically, quality is a good vehicle for exchanging on coffee in general, you know, and how can this information on the quality that's being produced and the things that are happening on both sides of the supply chain, how can people communicate more efficiently so that they see what's going on the other side? And now coming back finally to the very, very important point that you made, is how can we avoid that people drop out from producing high quality coffee, so that they know there is demand, there will be more demand, people still believe in what I'm doing. The cash situation might be bad, but I should carry on, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of just an encouragement towards education, which is coffee is a seasonal product. It has its times of the year. I mean, I think it's quite easy sometimes. I speak to a lot of roasters and I really like it, appreciate that very immediate business. they're not necessarily aware of the schedules always of when a harvest is happening compared to where they're getting something. I used to look at Sweet Maria's. I think they have a really nice harvest calendar. I mean, lots of people have different harvest calendars, but it's being aware in the planning cycle sometimes for producers, and also for producers sometimes to communicate that the other way of like, okay, where am I right now? Where am I in my decision-making process? Because yeah, I mean, Morten said it perfectly. In Peru, their picking costs have gone through the roof. And now is a moment to tell somebody in Peru, if you're going to cut your commitment, or you're cutting your commitment to X special blend that you were buying from them, now is the time to know it. Because if they don't need to go and spend on having 30 pickers in every field because they only really need to like select the cherry, then they need to know it today, not in 2 months when you would normally make the order, because that's when you might see the first sample. So there's a little bit of encouragement to education, and then it's just, I mean, it's kind of simple things. It's the same way you connect with your family or your friends in this time. I guess it's like find a WhatsApp number, pick up the phone. You don't have to talk about coffee. I mean, it's really funny, but I like some of the favorite relationships we've helped facilitate. Half of them speak to each other about stuff like whether they got kids the same age or whether they like the same football team. I mean, coffee and business generally extends a little bit beyond just coffee, and that helps to build a more solid relationship, because in general, if you talk a little around it, I think people feel more able to understand also that that relationship extends a bit further, and that it extends, you know, what price you get, what you sell, what business you do extends into the rest of your life as well. And I think that ameliorates people's reactions to, oh my God, why are you not buying this from me? Or why did you not produce this quality? I think, you know, no man is an island and no one lives in isolation. So I think that's it. It's such a simple solution. Just pick up the phone. I mean, this day and age, most people have an internet connection. I've still got a beautiful picture somewhere on a wall of a guy in Nicaragua riding a horse, looking at his 3G mobile phone underneath a banner announcing the arrival of 4G. I mean, you'd be amazed where WhatsApp or whatever gets to.
Yes, that's true. And I think you're right. Sometimes solutions don't have to be over-engineered. And it can truly help wherever possible, where people know their business partners. Also, you know, one step beyond the, let's call it intermediary, or the immediate business partner, to just get in touch with the people you're buying from by any means that you can, and exchange on each other's situation, and try to find a bilateral solution. It's a very popular term nowadays.
Mm-hmm. I'd only I have to say though, that having spoken to some of the roasters that we work with, do be aware that sometimes they might also be really busy with other stuff, because just occasionally no one wants to hear from you because their daughter's sick or something. So if someone can't get back to you immediately, please, like, yeah, I don't want to be the person who got every producer showered with 70 phone calls within the next 24 hours.
No, of course not. And I think we all got this point. But you know, I'm you know, almost a little bit summarizing to where we got to in this webinar session until now. It comes down to solid and good communication, and then also to education, which is a duty of all of us. And one person, that's the next one on the panel, that is Geoff Watts of Intelligentsia. Geoff, you are, you know, with your role at Intelligentsia, you have a lot of insights into both sides of the business. You know, you facilitate direct trade, but you work for a roasting business. Now, of course, you know, the problems on either side reinforce the issues on the other. How, like, gradually moving into the perspective of a roastery, how do you guys adapt your, you know, your channels, your communication, and your interaction with people upstream, but also at the same time ensuring, you know, that your business remains upright? Maybe you can just shed a little bit light on what you guys are doing in that respect.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Andy. I mean, obviously, business is down a lot. We've had to close all of our stores. A lot of our wholesale business are restaurants and other coffee shops, which are also closed. And the one thing that I think we all should embrace is that this idea that a month from now, 2 months from now, the lights aren't going to go back on, and we'll return to business as usual. I think we've recognized that and are trying to think about the rest of this year through that lens. Understanding that there will be some business that comes back, there will be some that doesn't. Whether that's 10%, whether that's 20%, whether it's 50%. I don't think any of us can accurately say we can look into the future and know how the rest of this year is going to unfold. But one thing I think, well, a couple things as a business and as somebody who has always been oriented towards creating durable partnerships. I think this is a crisis that tests all of our will, it tests our strength, it tests and reveals our true nature and belief systems. So if you're a roaster and you see coffee farmers as brothers and sisters, you see them as partners rather than just suppliers, I think we have a responsibility to look out for one another, understanding that whatever we're facing right now is temporary. It may last longer than we'd all like it to, but there will be another side to all of this. And there's this concept of resiliency that I think somebody mentioned earlier. Not everyone has the same degree of resiliency, and most of the farmers of coffee are probably the most vulnerable in the supply chain, meaning that they have the least ability to handle a short circuit in income. And since the majority of farmers rely on a single harvest to sustain themselves and their families for a year, the consequence of a shutdown or the consequence of a loss in income or sale is probably going to have bigger lasting effects and longer lasting effects on their business and the ability to come out the other side and rebound in a strong way than it would for a lot of roasters. So, this is not to say that roasters should be taking on tremendous risk or driving their businesses to the edge of collapse by trying to support their partners or buying what they would normally buy, even knowing that they're going to face drastically reduced sales for at least the next few months. Having a 2-year supply of aging coffee probably doesn't benefit anybody, but it does mean taking on as much risk as you can stomach, realizing that most farmers have a lesser degree of protection against a shortfall. I think it means also getting very creative about figuring out not just how to restart your business once things open up, but how to change it and grow it. This is a unique opportunity for all of us to look critically at our business models and think about not just what isn't working right now, but what new possibilities might emerge in the wake of COVID. And I think there are a lot of interesting possibilities. I mean, one thing we've seen, and I think most of you who are roasters or retailers have seen, is that in-home consumption has gone crazy. The coffee businesses that are thriving right now are the coffee businesses that sell a lot through grocery and through online sales. And I would expect after the initial surge in COVID, as people begin to relax stay-at-home rules, that there will be a return to retail, but it won't be a tidal wave. It'll be a very slow return. And for that reason, I think it makes a lot of sense for businesses, especially coffee roasters, to think about means of reaching other people. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I've seen. And this is that this is a call to get more proactive in reaching out to customers, figuring out how to meet them where they are, figuring out how to bring coffee to them, to put coffee in their hands. If you're a roaster that's depended largely on small coffee shops and restaurants as your customer base, it makes a lot of sense right now to begin planning to find ways to deliver coffee more directly to consumers, begin investing a lot more in your online sales. I do think if you're a retailer, one of the smartest things you can do right now is begin to think about how you can change your operations in a way that will make people feel safe when it is time to come out of the house. And people are craving some social contact. They're craving the ability to socialize. They're craving a return to some of their rituals, and they're craving access to great coffee handmade by talented baristas. But they're also feeling very insecure about their safety. And so I think the more you can do, whether it's redesigning your cafes, spreading tables out, putting hand sanitizer everywhere, doing advertising your cleaning procedures, introducing more airflow to the space, creating takeaway windows, making it easy for people to come by and just get coffee. That all can help a lot and help you start quickly once things open up again. Because the one thing we can be almost certain of is it's not going to just be business as usual at the end of this. But Richard said something that I think was important, which is that it doesn't behoove us, any of us, to, whether we're business operators or just partners in a larger supply chain, to run with fear or to go after what's in front of us with a pessimistic attitude. I think we should be optimistic about our ability to get creative and find new ways to sell coffees, new ways to keep our businesses afloat while facing some lessened sales or income. And this is a time, so a few of you have mentioned partnership, and this is a time to reach out to our partners, to acknowledge that we're in this together and say to each other, what can I do to help you thrive under these new conditions? And you'd be surprised how solutions can emerge that you might not have thought about had you been walled off and thinking about your own situation in a vacuum. And once you begin to talk to your partners about how they're doing and what you could do together to lessen risk or mitigate risk for the next few months or for the next year, I think you end up coming out with some really good ideas.
These are great thoughts and great suggestions. I think there is a lot of truth in that, particularly that we should remain optimistic. And you use the word creative. As in any crisis, there is a lot of opportunity. And you gave a few very great, I would say, concrete suggestions, especially like for people in retail to promote what they do to react and adapt to this situation for their customers, so that they feel sooner more comfortable to return to their business whenever they can and consume the beverages there. Nadine mentioned at the very beginning, it all boils down to the demand of how much people buy coffees. And yes, finding different channels is one side of this creativity. Like set yourself up not only right now to be able to sell coffees for online sales and e-commerce and things like that, but we have now for the first time, humanity has gone through this crisis as a global pandemic, for all the people alive at least. And people should, and that's just a comment from me as a neutral spectator somehow, to build up resilience and build up risk management on their side. So that whenever such a situation returns, that they can shuffle a little bit more and don't set too much on one card. Because like you said, very truly, the most vulnerable are those at origin, in all matters of the capital that there are, financial, human, natural, etc. So not only are these measures on the retail side, I think, valuable for the businesses themselves, but it will eventually also help people further up the stream. And I think, yeah, these suggestions are very good. They're very actionable as well. And I'm curious what our last panelist, Violeta Stevens from Union Hand Roasted, you know, we've now, I believe you and Geoff are in a relatively similar sector, position, business, call it how you want. Just like Geoff, you're working in a roastery that is very strongly engaged in direct trade. You're also an expert for many aspects of the supply chain. So hooking into the comments of Geoff, looking at your own business, how have you adapted your channels? How have you adapted your communication to customers on the one side, but also to people at origin or your trade partners on the other side?
Yes, thanks, Andy. Well, for those who know, our business is quite diversified in terms of sales channels. Still, the majority of our business is in wholesale. So it's fair to say that we definitely have lost a big percentage of our sales and obviously our revenue. But at the same time, we have an established grocery channel and also a kind of a good e-commerce business. So what happened overnight, a month ago actually, when the government instructed for non-essential business to close their doors, and obviously that kind of triggered almost a total collapse of the out-of-home consumption, what we were left with, it was grocery and e-commerce. So it took a lot of planning, it's fair to say, and looking into the opportunities and seeing how we can obviously adapt the business and reach our customers. Because it is true, and quite a few people said that the customers continue to drink coffee, is more how we get the coffee to them. And if they love the brand, again, they will try and find the brand out there, being online or in the stores. So we had to deploy all of our resources into grocery and e-commerce. And we've seen 3- to 4-fold increase in our e-commerce sales in the last 4 to 5 weeks. We also have seen a significant increase in our grocery business. And what that meant is that operationally, we had to make obviously changes to be able to roast, pack and deliver coffee through these channels. Now, number one, what was very important for us was ensuring the safety of our people and our team. And of course, it was everything from providing protective equipment, but also ensuring that there is sufficient space in the roastery for them to kind of keep approximately 2 meters apart. What we had to look at, it was very much around our processes. It was ensuring that we are as efficient as we can be. We looked at our range, and it's fair to say that we have a pretty extensive range on our website. So we had to rationalize that and cut down to the key coffees people love and want to definitely continue drinking. But we had to bring some efficiencies when it comes to operation. So it was very, very important. We looked at our stocks for sure, and coffee, as quite a few people said, of course, the ratio stock to sales has changed dramatically in the last 4 weeks. But at the same time, we had to obviously look at other stocks like packaging and really communicate with key stakeholders we have within the chain. Obviously coffee producers and partners, but also our, let's say, packaging suppliers as well, just to ensure what they're going through, or check what they're going through and ensure continuity of supply. Also, internal communication, I have to say, it's very important. It's been very important for us, and that's alignment within the teams. So this is operations, sales, and marketing, to kind of make sure that we all align our plans and work together. So overall, I mean, if I need to kind of summarize it, I think being dynamic, being open-minded, being adaptable, quick decision-making has been very important for us. Good internal communication and good external communication. So I know communication is coming back a lot during this webinar, but definitely it's in our experience, it's been absolutely key for the last 4 weeks.
Yes, this is, I would say, a great and wealthy run through, especially from the process side of a roastery. I'll take it that you had to, you know, for the social distancing and for your ability to keep running your operations in an efficient manner, you had to reduce your coffee range. I assumed this comment was, you know, towards the customer side, things that you will be roasting, and of course it will also affect your buying decisions. Now we've listened a little bit to you know, Nadine, Adam, but also Morten, mm-hmm. that their roastery customers are, I would say, they try to keep selling smaller amounts of the same coffees to all of their customers. How does your the interaction with your suppliers turn out in that way when you say, okay, you know, I have to reduce my range, but, you know, is there any but that you can say, okay, this is, you know, I can foresee that we can extend to the full range at this and that time, or we can commit to this and that volume. Like, I'm just curious about that other side of the communication from the coffee buying.
Okay, but I should probably make it clear that what I mean by reducing ranges was very much kind of limiting the micro lots we have on the website, and probably sticking to the top 10 best sellers. So this is a coffee that we already have here in the UK. So we have committed for the coffee. And it is down to us to kind of decide when's the right time to release back the micro lots. We have had a lot of requests from customers already. So we're having a meeting this Friday just to see operationally how quickly we can go back to a fuller range. Mm-hmm. But it will not impact in any way or form the coffee producers, because, as I said, these are micro lots that we already have committed. We just had to do it to allow the team to obviously kind of roast for longer, and you know, I mean, definitely shorter range optimizes the operations, and also deliver on time for our customers, because you can imagine if you have increased demand by 400% suddenly overnight, it's not that easy to adapt, and we really don't want to be turning anybody down and saying, sorry, we can't get coffee to you. So we thought that this approach will allow us to kind of balance both, but we are going to put back our micro lots as soon as possible.
This is great, and sorry if I picked that comment up in a wrong way. It's great that you stick to your microlot commitments. Is there any, I mean, you're, I would say, a relatively large provider of specialty coffee out of the UK. Do you have any advice for smaller businesses or smaller roasteries? I know that many of the people listening to this webinar on what they can do in addition to what Geoff already mentioned, to build up a little bit more of resilience and maybe adapt to the situation. And again, wearing two hats, because that is luckily the thread that turned out of this webinar, is that yes, roasting businesses have to make sure that they remain in business, but ideally to a level that they can also help producers and everybody in between remain in business.
Mm-hmm. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but I definitely, the diversification of the sales portfolio helps for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it de-risks any business. I mean, that's not just coffee. Short supply chains, as you mentioned earlier, we obviously have our own model, which is called Union Direct Trade. We buy direct from all of our coffee partners, and we work with over 40 producer partners across 14 countries. So it's a pretty complex network, but still we have a very short supply chain. So we know our partners, we can talk to them regularly. And the moment we obviously started, or COVID became more present in our lives, the communication with our coffee partners was essential. Our sustainable coffee manager, Pascal, who some probably do know, she's been in constant communication with our partners at Origin. Also the communication with consumers, and I think that's very important because we are brands, and it is a relationship that we have created over time with our consumers, and that is very important. So when we are talking about testing the resilience in this period, it's testing the resilience of the whole value chain, not only of the supply chain, I want to say. And that's been very important for us, and a great example that actually we can take our audience from probably, you know, one channel to another, but also that time and that period allows us to build new audience and make new friends. And that's, again, talking about opportunities. Absolutely. I mean, that's why working very closely internally with our marketing team, sales team, it allows us to really kind of make the most of the situation and really find the consumer at home and educate them on how to kind of make their house a coffee house. And then that's been an experience for sure. A lots of live Instagram videos and chats, and I can see lots of people are doing that. But yeah, we can see that it's been fruitful.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for these insights and comments. I think like every good live show, we've extended our time limit by quite a bit right now, which makes me happy. So there was a very lively conversation going on without, sadly, you know, the interactive microphone exchange as you would normally have on a couch on a stage. But I think we can. I'm not sure if all of our panelists can remain in the room, but we have a couple of questions from our fellow attendees. And I would just like to open the microphone of the entire panel, if my beautiful invisible assistant could do this for me. And I will read out a couple of questions. And, you know, it's going to be 6 people with a microphone on, but then let's just do a polite first come first serve scenario for whoever responds to the questions. I have a question from Stanley Slater, who says, we expect picking costs to increase. This also will probably impact yields. How will the market be able to recover with less cherry but also less sales? Anyone feel free to jump in. So basically, there's going to be less demand, but also less supply. And of course, it's a big question. How will the market be able to recover? Maybe just some open comments on this one.
I mean, I don't think there's a direct correlation between like less picking and less coffee. I mean, there's less fine quality coffee, yes, but I mean, there'll still be coffee. So I think that's the first one. And the second one, I'm not sure if it's actually a bad thing for the market. I mean, if you look at the longer term cycle, we're at the bottom end of a price super cycle. Prices have been very low for quite a while. And in some ways, if a bit of production comes out and that pushes the price more towards a sustainable base point, I know everybody hates New York, but it is there, and it is dragging, I think, average prices down because it's used as a reference point by so many people. So in some ways, it's not the end of the world. I mean, but then there are other big factors that are tied to it as well. I mean, Brazilian producers are being paid more than they've ever been paid in real terms. So they're able to carry a really low price for their coffee because 2 years ago they were getting 3 reais for $1, and now they're getting 5.3, and they're getting paid not that much lower a price. So, I mean, it's just, there are very complex dynamics behind it. And I don't think it's a one-for-one correlation is the real answer. But I would say actually a slightly less coffee might not necessarily be a bad thing in the midterm for a kind of general encouragement for the industry towards a slightly more sustainable position, and then planning to match consumer growth rather than kind of these massive waves of production and then price crashes and then a price spike because everybody uproots it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think, you know, when this first started, you saw two very polar opposite reactions from the trade. You saw some scrambling to beef up their supply, a lot of the larger roasters, with some fear that the market would spike at some point due to disruptions in production or in delivery logistics because of sea freight disruptions or internal transport disruptions. And then you saw the other side where people just stopped buying altogether out of fear that they would take on stock that they would never be able to sell because the entire world would shut down. You know, and I think the reality is somewhere in between that. But one thing we've seen about coffee, and even that's lived with the coffee business for some time, is seen that people don't ever stop drinking coffee. People will always drink coffee. It's just how they consume it, where they get it will change. The means and the modes will change. But you know what I think we can all look at here is one big opportunity I see for quality is people are finding themselves with more time on their hands. Life has slowed down for a lot of us. People are drinking more coffee at home, which actually makes quality a lot more accessible economically, because if you're buying a bag of coffee rather than buying your coffee by the cup, you can access a quality of coffee that you may never have thought was available to you. You know, if you think about the cost of even a $20 or $30 pound bag of coffee, if you make it at home by the cup, you're talking about less than $1. So this, I see that as a massive opportunity for all of us who work in the specialty trade to reach out to consumers, tell them that we're here to help give them an amazing coffee experience and make sure they have something in their life that is delicious, and arm them with whatever they need to learn to be more discerning consumers of coffee, learn to embrace the tastes available to them in coffee. This is, you know, we talked a little bit about innovation. I think the preconditions for innovation are as exciting as they've ever been, given that you've got this combination of people who are reevaluating their lives and their habits, who are sitting at home with time to contemplate how and why they do things. And you also have this extreme pressure on businesses that need to evolve and change and adapt in order to survive. And that combination together should, you know, if embraced with Richard's optimism and not with pessimism, should lead us towards some breakthroughs in terms of convincing more people about the value of specialty coffee and quality and the pleasure they can derive from it. how easy it is to access once it's the myth of the the fancy machines and the need for extremely skillful baristas is peeled away, and you see that the connection between you as a consumer, a roaster, and a farmer can actually be pretty direct, and by making it more direct, you actually reduce some of the costs of coffee and make it more efficient for everyone. So I'm not necessarily, I don't think the sky is falling with regard to our ability collectively as an industry to sell amazing coffees. I think we actually may have an opportunity in front of us if we're willing to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with Geoff, and I think it's up to the industry and up to roasters to be able to communicate and touch upon that feeling that people are feeling at the moment. That is, they want to consume products that are local. They want to support local businesses or local roasteries, and as you said, they have more time in order to assess. And everyone is reevaluating a lot of the parts of their life and a lot of their consumer behavior. And I think it's a great time to as an industry to show why we're here, and in reality that the principles of the industry, that we're good people being good to other people, and the human connection, as you said, from the farmer to the roaster to the end consumer, and really engaging with all the amazing people around the chain.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think the overall I don't want to call it optimism. I want to call it positivity. Is key. I think this has been a threat through this entire presentation. And to conclude on your guys' comments, there is a lot of I would say push on creativity and innovation. People have a lot of time to contemplate. Not everything is naturally bad, maybe bad in a moment, but it has as well the potential to create stronger bonds. And what I have heard in this talk so far, that people still want to buy specialty coffee, still want to buy coffee, and they do care where it comes from, whether this is the local shop around the corner or from another business perspective, the origin partner they've always been working with. So this is I would say a very, very good approach and philosophy that the audience should pick up. I have a question from, I'm hoping I pronounce this correctly, Madhav Pandit. This goes outside of the specialty coffee. It seems, are the large import and roasting houses contributing anything from their profit in the current scenario towards smallholder producers? As smallholder producers have been highly affected and are heading even towards food insecurity. Do you guys know anything about the larger coffee industry as such, or also as well from within the specialty businesses, if there have been made any commitments from large corporations to mitigate the impact on more vulnerable smallholders?
Not particularly aware of any big commitments as they stand, but I think that's partly because a lot of the immediate reaction has been quite short term and no one really knows where it's going. I look at it from what I see in the news just from my home country in the UK, and you see a lot of action towards maybe frontline workers, if that makes sense, which is a kind of the immediate vulnerable people, and offering free coffees. And I think maybe they're not sure yet what the impact will really be in other places. I don't know. I mean, Geoff, you're in Colombia. Are you seeing anything on the ground? Or Nadine, is there something happening in Guatemala? I haven't heard.
No, I mean, I'm here in Bogota. The city is silent. With regard to corporations changing who they are and deciding that they want to take care of the world. I wouldn't count on that. I think large corporations generally have one overriding goal, which is to take care of their shareholders. That said, you know, I think I feel pretty strongly that we are going to emerge from this crisis changed as a society and as individuals, and we're going to reevaluate what has meaning to us and what doesn't. And to that end, I think it's an amazing opportunity for small businesses to come out of this running and looking to connect with their communities. You know, I think there is Casey, who's on this call, pointed out one thing that I think was very interesting comment, which is that there are, you know, the smallest of producers, the micro farmers who live off their land and have do all of their farming using family labor. In some regards, are going to be a lot more capable of rebounding from this and making it through this crisis than some of the larger farms. You know, I think our job as roasters and retailers, more than anything else, is to continue going out to try to change the way consumers think about coffee, the way they pay for it, the way they appreciate it, the way they evaluate it, the relationship they have with quality and the traceability. And if we all exercise our ability to have influence in a moment when people are listening, people are at home doing very little other than listening, now is a great time to try to push the movement forward. And I think with regard to the welfare of the world's farmers, the more small businesses can erode the market share of the larger corporations, the better off we'll all be as a world. So that's a marching call for everybody on this to not stick your head in the sand right now, but to see this as a moment where we can actually go out and make a difference, influence the future.
We are seeing a bit of responsibility from a lot of the bigger companies in Guatemala, not necessarily coffee related, but because we are a country that exports and produces so much, like we depend on agriculture. And we have seen a really nice come together of bigger companies, either with donating, you know, everything from masks to food to everything for the entire population, and especially for those that are more vulnerable. So I think because obviously our government is not as a European government, and unfortunately we're not receiving that much help from the government, but it's very nice to see that the private industry has come together in order to support and make sure that, you know, trying to keep everyone's job as best as possible and supporting in that way. So maybe they're not direct you know, contributions to small coffee producers, but there is a movement, as Geoff was saying, a movement towards a different sort of trade and a different sense of responsibility for our workers and for, you know, for the health of all of the industries that support the country.
Great, thanks, Nadine. Actually, these are the way you formulated your responses would actually make a fantastic point to stop this webinar, because it leaves everyone with a little bit of an action item. But I have one more question that I would like to raise, and it has been answered somewhere between the lines. I believe it was Richard, but anyone can jump in. Maybe I'm also interested about Morten's thoughts on this. The coffee price. How do you expect the coffee price, the C price, to evolve over the coming, let's say, foreseeable time, 1-2 years, and then maybe we can reflect on, you know, what's going on in New York, but also specialty coffee prices and margins as such.
Was this for me or for Richard? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I would not be the one that, or I think nobody can actually predict about the sea price. I mean, it's too complicated, at least for me. But I mean, I have no idea. You know, like short term. If it goes like we discussed earlier, you know, like about like picking, and maybe it's less from some countries at least, there might be less specialty. So, I mean, hopefully that drives the prices for specialty up. A lot of the prices for specialty is still way too low. But over the next years, I wouldn't be able to judge that. I mean. But I mean, just some examples from, I mean, I work with a producer in Uganda, and, you know, like because of the COVID situation now, he have like a small to medium-sized farm and work with some outgrowers, and, you know, like he basically need to produce 200 bags for this season to manage generally both his income and also to manage the farm, and he's not able to produce more than 100 probably because of the new situation with transport of cherries and the cherry collection, and also the fact that they're not allowed to have that many people on their you know, like on their washing station. So I mean, the question is more about how we will go about that as an industry. I mean, are we willing to chip in and you know, like support in that situation or not? So yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of on a similar wavelength to Morten, that it's really hard to see exactly where the coffee price will go, just because there's so many weird factors involved with it in terms of consumption and what things will open up. I think a more interesting question would be maybe like whether the price will continue to diverge from the sea market. And I think that's happening in specialty. And I think there's been a really positive move with a lot of roasters moving away from buying based off the sea price and trying to set up longer term relationships and longer term supply contracts. And I think that's a very positive step in the right direction. And then you're not really tied to a commodity market, because it's kind of weird that the contract comes out of an era when it was a much more commodity product. I think specialty's taken it a direction of being much more differentiated and tied to where it comes from and the processor and how it's been processed. So, I mean, I hope that's maybe like a slight tangent, but maybe that's where we will go. I'd be really optimistic with it. I think it would pull a lot of producers out of very precarious situations if they had more of that kind of business behind them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important, as we have all been discussing, to stick together and for all the members of the supply chain to be able to communicate and stay strong as an industry, so that we don't lose all the work that we've done to commercial coffee. You know, people are going to still drink coffee, but hopefully they'll be drinking quality coffee and specialty coffee, and there's going to be, you know, an interest in where the coffee comes from and who's behind your product and all of that. So along with the prices, and I agree, it's more about the difference between the commodity price and the specialty price rather than where the sea market is. I think that's where we should aim towards as an industry, and take this opportunity where, as I said, people are reevaluating their consumption patterns and move it in that direction.
Yes, I think, but now I do take this statement as a nice wrap up to this webinar. I think we've had 2 wonderful hours of conversations, and I'm trying to conclude a little bit on what we've been discussing, but I invite every one of the panelists, once I'm done with my few words, to leave the audience with just one statement, wherever you want it to direct to. to go home with from this webinar. So summing up, I think it becomes clearer and clearer that the specialty coffee supply chain has to, but it also has the opportunity to stand closer together and build stronger bonds. Communication is very key to make sure the other side understands the impact on the other. Also to wiggle a little bit of the impact back and forth. We've confirmed a well-known fact that the origin and smallholders are the most vulnerable. So everybody on the demand side has a responsibility not only for their own business, but also further up the chain to keep these businesses alive for today, for the future, for their livelihoods. We have a strong need for education, which means pulling more people into a specialty coffee business, educate them in why this is good, educate them in new channels of consuming coffees, like consuming coffee at home as opposed to retail, while retail is gradually picking up again, and use all our creativity and innovative minds to make sure that that the demand stays upright. Diversification of business helps on either side, so that the impact of this crisis right now, but it may also come back in the future, is less, so that you can use different channels to mitigate this risk. And with this, I'll just stop with my poor monologue and poor attempt to conclude on this. I just want to virtually hand the mic from Adam down to Violeta, the way we introduced them. Maybe you want to leave the audience with just a statement or something to walk home with. Adam, we start with you.
Closing statement. Okay. Let's see. I would say that no matter the position, what's happening in people's lives, that they'll always want something special, some kind of special moment that I think a really fine cup of coffee can give them. So through that enjoyment and connecting the person to the farmer and to the story and to what they've done to produce that cup of coffee will always be valued and will always have a place in the market.
Great.
I agree, and I think, as I've said before, I know that everyone is currently in the moment and worrying about themselves, but it would be nice if everyone takes some time to step back and see where all of their products are coming from, and to understand that not only coffee, but their fruits and vegetables and everything, there's people behind all of that, and to make sure that they know where it's coming from and try to be as conscious in their buying and in their consumption patterns going forward.
Yeah, totally agree to that. And as from an importer, point of view, I also see this as opportunities, both in the way, we are working with producers and coffee and for the roasters, and I also think, maybe now more than ever, when with the situation, maybe, planning and more communication is super important, and also commitment, understanding that, people can't commit to as much as they would like to, but we are super happy to take that dialogue individually. And I also think this is maybe not a time to be too fussy about the small, very nitty-gritty things, we have to try to be pragmatic and just support each other, and maybe I think there will be a better future coming out of this. Thanks.
Richard.
Yeah, I don't know. I just actually enjoyed listening to everyone else. So it's really good. I think that's kind of where I went back to a little bit, which is I think most of us are in coffee because it's kind of fun, and it's an odd moment and it's kind of a depressing one, but it's just really fun to be involved with something that people really enjoy. So I kind of try into what Adam says. It's just like coffee is something to be enjoyed, not to get too weighed down with it. Yeah, and for that reason, keep the dialogue open, to speak to people and talk to people that you work with. Keep looking out, use it as a moment to be dynamic and sort of see what can be done.
Geoff?
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I think now is the time to use your imagination. So this is a time to get creative about and make a resolution not to come out of this break from normality and from life, from the world. Don't come out the same way you came in, and use the opportunity to reflect a lot on how you do your business, how you run your business, how you buy coffee, how you sell it, and think of ways to do it better. There will be a lot of opportunity. And if I could make a small plug for the Cup of Excellence, I see that as a very interesting opportunity this year, because a lot of roasters may not buy those coffees or haven't been buying them historically, because they tend to mostly all end up in Japan at prices that people feel are prohibitive. I think this year may be a year when the prices are actually a lot more affordable for roasters in the European and US markets. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look. That's a program that certainly needs and merits everyone's support, and this may be an opportunity to be involved in a way that you might not have been able to or wanted to before. I'll also say, there's a lot of interesting things to look at economically when you, like one of the side effects of this crisis and the drop in oil prices has meant that the dollar to Colombian peso has gone to an extreme difference, where it now is almost 4,000 pesos to the US dollar, meaning that if you're buying Colombian coffee right now, your dollar can yield a lot more benefit to farmers than it would have even 2 or 3 months ago. So there are some unexpected, interesting advantages that are coming through. And beyond that, I just want to say to everyone, be powerful, be excited, be willing to embrace this new world rather than run from it. Know that people will be looking for answers, and that you can be helping them find what they're looking for. And don't touch your face.
Violeta, you're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. How do I follow that? Well, I believe that this crisis highlights, personally for me, one thing, and that's how important relationships are. And these are relationships with everybody around us, understanding their world and understanding that at the end of the day, we are all part of the one. And we discussed a little bit about rebalancing risk and value within the chain, and we do see that this is definitely the time to apply that knowledge. But yeah, I want to leave everybody with kind of the thought that building strong, sustainable relationships it will be very important, not just for this crisis, but probably for the ones that are coming our way in the future. Hopefully I'm wrong in that, but there you go. So build strong ones, and let's think that we're all part of the one coffee industry. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to end this. Thanks a lot, guys. I think, I cannot add anything more to that except a huge, big time thank you to all 6 of you that joined this panel. I think it was a great conversation. On behalf of the audience, I'm gonna applaud to you. And I think this will not be the last time that we engage, of course not. And I don't even try to summarize what has been said. I think everybody took up the optimism and pragmatism and innovation philosophy, and will now contemplate on how they can support this business and this supply chain. There's one thing that I want to mention for everybody who's seeking to move their retail business to online. There is a free web shop initiative that we launched at Cropster. It's called shipsbeans.com. Anybody interested in finding a free solution during the pandemic, please check out shipsbeans.com. Other than that, we will continue with these webinars. There will be, for the customers among you of Cropster, we will have practical workshops starting in May latest, but do watch our space, do watch our social media as we confirm and launch them more regularly. And there will also be a follow-up panel discussion, another one of this kind with a similar, different topic. Again, I'm sorry that not all questions could have been answered, but there is only so much time. And again, I want to extend a huge thank you to the panel and everybody who joined. Do stay safe, do drink coffee, and like Geoff said, don't touch your face. Thank you very much for all of your attendance. This will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube, and we hope to see you there and on our other channels. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good night, morning, wherever you are. Bye-bye.